Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pro Wrestling Top 5, brought to you from the Wrestling Red Carpet, starring the Showstopper Shawn Valentino, also starring Rich Twiling. This week's episode, the top 5 Money in the Bank cash-ins of all time.
Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Top 5.
Hey, how you doing, boys and girls? Rich Twiling here, your host. This is the Pro Wrestling Top 5. I'm here with my co-host, Shawn Valentino, the international playboy, the next Hugh Hefner. And in honor of the upcoming Money in the Bank pay-per-view, we're going to talk about the top 5 cash-ins from the people that won the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And in honor of the show, too, I'm wearing my money green tie. Always looking good. Richie is money. Hashtag that. So, Shawn Valentino, give me your number 5.
Well, let's get started. And number 5 on my list is a guy that really used the Money in the Bank briefcase to make himself a bigger star. And it's The Miz. And I think what's great about The Miz winning the Money in the Bank match and cashing it in against Randy Orton on Raw is that The Miz was a very unlikely superstar. He started off in reality TV, being a part of many reality TV shows myself. Miz and I were both on Fear Factor. I did a commercial with The Miz years back before he won the championship. So, very cool guy, a great story because this is a guy that was a huge wrestling fan, ended up working hard to become a wrestler, started off in Tough Enough, ended up winning Money in the Bank and winning the championship. And most of us, I think, thought at the time that this is a guy that's probably going to be a transitional champion. He might have the title for a week or two. He might lose it the next week on Raw, but he ended up becoming a WrestleMania main eventer and had one of the best WrestleMania entrances of all time. We might get to that on a future topic, but I think just the idea of The Miz, a guy that started off as a wrestling fan, went on to reality TV, which I can relate to, and then finally cashing in the Money in the Bank to become the WWE champion. Just a great, great story, and that's why he's number 5 on my list.
And The Miz did indeed become a WrestleMania main eventer. And speaking of that, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Stone Cold Steve Austin and the Broken Skull IPA that we enjoy every time we do one of these broadcasts.
A main event beer.
Absolutely, El Segundo Brewery. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, El Segundo. We do this every time we do one of these shows, and we're gonna keep doing that. So keep brewing this, and we'll enjoy it, and we'll keep doing what we do. And Miz may or may not come up later on my list because that was one of my favorites. But number 5 on my list is a guy that you would never think that would win Money in the Bank, because when the Money in the Bank concept was brought forth, it was more like, hey, remember the King of the Ring way back when? It was kind of,
it was a star maker.
We're gonna anoint a new star, a new star of the future, or maybe within the next year or so. And so you would never think John Cena would be a Money in the Bank ladder match winner, which he was. Reason. And John Cena won that match, and he did, unlike a lot of people did, he actually said he was going to cash in a week before he cashed in, and he did so on Raw 1000 against CM Punk. And CM Punk was the WWE champion at the time. John Cena cashed in against him. He did not win the title that night, but I just like the fact that it was a little bit different because the whole concept is you can cash in anytime you want, and you can do so after somebody's match or after he was beaten to death, all this stuff. But John Cena said, hey, I'm going to cash in. I'm going to go one-on-one with CM Punk at Raw 1000, making that the main event of that show. And although he didn't win the title that night because, you know, Punk was in the midst of his record-long WWE Championship run at the time, it was great that got a little something different with it. So I'm going to go John Cena number 5.
And Cena's not going to make my list, but that really fits into the Cena character of hustle, loyalty, respect. This is not a guy that's going to take a sneaky way around winning the championship, even though winning Money in the Bank gives you the right to do so, so it's within the rules. But this was one of the great matches in Raw history, if not WWE history. I remember that just brought back a lot of memories watching CM Punk and John Cena. Those two had great chemistry in the ring. I'm sure all of you know that, but that was just an amazing, amazing match. And yeah, I have to give an honorable mention to that. Even though in my mind, Money in the Bank should be kind of like King of the Ring in that it should anoint a new star instead of having someone that's won numerous titles.
Or even back in the day, the Intercontinental Champion. Remember way back when the Intercontinental Champion was kind of the heir apparent to becoming a future WWE Champion. Way back when, but I digress. You go ahead.
Cool. So on to number 4, and speaking of trying to use Money in the Bank to take a star to a whole new level, I'm going to go with my number 4, and that's Dolph Ziggler. And unlike The Miz, this is a perfect example of how a Money in the Bank cash-in didn't work. I was there when Dolph cashed in his Money in the Bank the day after WrestleMania. He probably gave the best promo of his career. It sounded unscripted, straight from the heart. It was amazing. And at the time, Ziggler was a heel, and I would always argue that Ziggler is at his best when he's a heel character, and I think
it's in his Twitter handler. That's who he is. He wants to be that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also what's wrong with him, is that he's putting that on his Twitter, because this is a guy I think that has a lot of potential. He has a lot of the tools. I've met this guy numerous times. Very, very, very nice guy. We see him every year. You see him at the bars around the Hollywood area. Cool guy, but I think there's just something missing there, and I think that it just shows to show you that cashing in that Money in the Bank, even though he has a lot of the elements to make him a huge star, there's I think some of that charisma and some of those promo skills are missing, and it's sad because I kind of saw a lot of talent in him, and he's a very talented wrestler. It's just that he cashed in, but I don't think he necessarily cashed out.
I think he's very nice. I think he's the example of a guy who would do well with unscripted promos. Like, imagine him speaking from the heart back in 1998. I think that would have done him a lot of good. And he's also a fellow stand-up comedian, just like I am. And at my number 4, I'm gonna go with the original Money in the Bank winner, and that was Edge. And he won this match at WrestleMania 21. And you may or may not remember this, but Edge participated against Booker T in Toronto, his hometown, at WrestleMania 18. He missed WrestleManias 19 and 20. He came back. He had an injury at that time. He came back. He won the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 21. And at that point, you knew he was skyrocketing on his way to becoming a future multi-time world champion, and as we know now, a Hall of Famer. And he cashed in by coming out after a John Cena match. John Cena, the WWE champion, retained his championship. Vince McMahon on the stage. He comes out, hands a briefcase to Vince McMahon, goes out and beats John Cena for his first championship. And I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You're beating the top guy, you hand the briefcase over to the boss, and you're the first ever. So in terms of the franchise, if you will, the Money in the Bank franchise, Edge led that off very well by not only winning the match, but succeeding in coming through by winning the championship, and that's what the match was meant to do.
Exactly, and my number 3 actually is Edge as well, and I think that Edge being the pioneer, the first ever winner of Money in the Bank, and if you've seen that first Money in the Bank match, it was one of the great matches in wrestling history. It really set the tone for what Money in the Bank could be, which was a new concept at the time. But Edge did very little in that match, which kind of was the perfect way to win it as a sneaky heel character, which really fit his gimmick. And him winning Money in the Bank really propelled him to become the rated R superstar, which took him to a whole new level of stardom, made him a Hall of Famer. And that first cash-in at New Year's Revolution, after a grueling Elimination Chamber match, really showed us all what the Money in the Bank match could be and how it could make a star. And I would argue, I'm sure you would too, that he was already a star, but that really took him to a new level of being a main event star. And that year, I would say that he probably helped make John Cena, took John Cena's career to a new level. That was probably one of the best rivalries.
He got John Cena, one of the best of all time, a huge star at that time even, and Edge took him to another level.
Yeah, that feud helped both of those guys in 2006. That was the feud of the year, I would say. So Edge was the guy that started all, the initial Mr. Money in the Bank. But who's going to be the best Money in the Bank cash-in of all time? We'll find out soon.
And one thing with Edge too, I want to say this. There's a risk in having a champion or having a match like Money in the Bank. A guy that, let's face it, you're anointing as a future WWE champion, and Edge never once was thought to be not good enough for that world. He won that match, And in my opinion, at least, and I think everybody around me at the time, he deserved that spot. And nobody thought, hey, he's out of his element here. Because remember, you know, he missed 2 Wrestlemanias.
Yeah.
He was a tag team guy before that. But he was ready. And he won that match, and he was the right guy to win that match. And so, there you go. Anyway, my number 3 on this list is similar to my number 5 in the sense that this guy won the Money in the Bank and said he was going to cash in an actual match ahead of time. And this, of course, is Rob Van Dam. And he cashed in against the aforementioned John Cena at ECW One Night Stand. And we all remember the sign up in this: if Cena wins,
we riot.
We riot. And if anybody's ever been to an ECW show at the old ECW arena or even the Hammerstein Ballroom, you know that they meant business, because I've been to many of those shows. And I know that if you're gonna put a sign up like that, they meant business. But nonetheless, of course, they would get arrested and go to jail. But nonetheless, John Cena versus Rob Van Dam that night, and Rob Van Dam won the title from John Cena, cashing his Money in the Bank. Paul Heyman came in, counted the 3. It was controversial at the time, but hey, one of the best cash-ins you're ever gonna have, because that was a legit main event match between 2 legit main event performers at a show where atmosphere, environment, ambiance
everything
means means almost everything. And you had it at that show. So Rob Van Dam cash in number 3. That's me.
And you notice a trend here that what I like about what Money in the Bank has gotten right on most occasions, you notice the babyface sometimes will actually, instead of sneaking up and cashing in the Money in the Bank briefcase randomly after a match, he's going to do the honorable thing and say, I'm going to beat you on this match, and he'll announce it ahead of time. And
it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But it did this time.
Yeah, I'd say it did to a certain degree. That night it worked out. I would say on the long run it probably might have proved to be a mistake. But number 2 on my list is also Rob Van Dam. I was there when he won the Money in the Bank briefcase at WrestleMania 22 in Chicago, which was one of the best Money in the Bank matches. Special shout out to Shelton Benjamin, who had some just incredible spots in that match. Arguably the best Money in the Bank performer ever, even though he never won a Money in the Bank match. But if we did a list about the best performers in Money in the Bank history, which we might do, if you guys can vote on it, put it in the comments if you want to hear it.
But Shelton, who we both are very fond of, he would definitely be on that list, of course.
And I just thought it was just an amazing story with ECW's One Night Stand in 2005, already a huge success. They had to do, Vince, not necessarily a big ECW fan, I don't even know if he ever watched it, but they decided to do another show in 2006, so you could kind of see where the story was going there. So when they announced that there would be another ECW One Night Stand pay-per-view, you could already kind of tell where the story was leading, and that RVD would probably be winning the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania 22. And I was there, and I had a feeling he was going to win. But it just turned out to be great drama, epic television. Just seeing those two clash on ECW One Night Stand in front of that arena full of rabid fans. And one of my favorite visuals was John Cena throwing his t-shirt out to the crowd, and the crowd throwing it back at him, which was just absolutely amazing. It just fit the whole idea and atmosphere of ECW, and that show was all about atmosphere. And RVD cashing in against John Cena at ECW One Night Stand number 2 was just, not only was it one of the best Money in the Bank cash-ins, I'd argue that for ECW fans that was kind of a moment of retribution. Right. And it was also probably one of the most fun wrestling moments that I've ever seen.
And a real quick redirect, counselor, John Cena walking down to the ring, holding up the WWE title as if he's afraid people are gonna hit him, touch him, and he held it very close to his body, like up above his head, but like close. Everything was, it looked like he was in danger for his life there, and that's the environment that they were going for, and they nailed it perfectly that night.
And speaking of that, now I want to give a special shout out to our friend OJ Entertainment from the UK, who was in the audience that night, and on every RVD entrance, they would show a background video package from that night, and he was there in the stands, and you can see him from the audience.
Love you, Rich.
Shout out to you, OJ.
Yep. Number 2 on my list is kind of a personal submission, if you will, and you mentioned this one at your number 5. But number 2 on my list is The Miz cashing in on Randy Orton, and then eventually becoming a WrestleMania main eventer at WrestleMania 27. The Miz, to me, and with all due respect to John Morrison, who is a very good friend of this show, a good friend of you, you've been in a commercial together, I always thought The Miz, when I was writing for ProWrestling.net, I thought he had the potential to be a main event star more than John Morrison did. And it wasn't disrespect towards John Morrison, it was more so what I saw in The Miz. And he became that guy when he won Money in the Bank, and nobody thought he was going to win that match. Yeah. Nobody. I don't even think I thought he was going to win that match. But he won that match, he cashed in, he beat Randy Orton, and let's face it, one of the big things about a Money in the Bank cash-in is when the music hits. And when his music hit that night, Randy Orton had just defended the WWE title against Wade Barrett when Wade Barrett was with the Nexus.
Yep.
And the Nexus kicked the shit out of Orton before the beginning of that match. And Orton still won that match. Miz comes out, he cashes in, he wins the WWE title, but he didn't do it in quick fashion. They had about a 7 or 8 minute match.
Yeah.
So it wasn't he snuck up and won the title, nothing like that. As somebody that's been on reality TV myself, I always thought of The Miz as somebody kind of like me. You know, somebody that kind of looked like me, somebody that had a dream, went out and did his thing. He became WWE champion that night. And then not only that, he held on to that title throughout the new year, all the way through the Rumble and the pay-per-view after that. I don't know if it was No Way Out or the Elimination Chamber, I can't remember. So not only did he win the WWE Championship that night, and like you said, a lot of people thought maybe a week or two champion. And this was in the fall. And he held on to the title through the Royal Rumble, and there's usually a big-time WWE Championship match at that pay-per-view, the number 2 pay-per-view of the year. And then all of a sudden, he's main eventing WrestleMania. He's main eventing WrestleMania against John Cena as WWE Champion in front of over 70,000 people at the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. The Miz did that. And a lot of people don't remember this, but he actually won that match. He didn't drop the title back to Cena until a month later. And he was a personal favorite of mine, and as a wrestling journalist, I thought he had greatness written all over him from the start, and I was one of the few that thought that, so I'm gonna take a little pride in that, and I'm okay doing that. And he won that title, he defended it at WrestleMania, he beat John Cena, the face of the company, and The Rock was at that WrestleMania, and let's face it, The Rock and John Cena were the focus to set up the next 2 WrestleManias.
Yeah.
But somebody had to be the main eventer. Somebody had to be the champion at that time. That was The Miz. And so The Miz at number 2, and I almost made him my number 1. But The Miz at number 2 is my Money in the Bank. But without doubt, The Miz is a very, very solid number 2 on my list of top 5 Money in the Bank cash-ins.
Which brings us to number 1, and I'll also play off what Rich was saying as far as predicting the future and predicting that Miz would be a big star. I was personally a huge John Morrison fan. I started in a commercial with Morrison and Miz for the movie Role Models. I always thought he was one of the great athletes in wrestling history, if not the best. But the Miz, I didn't necessarily see stardom in him. I thought he was just a little bit too goofy. The look wasn't really quite there, but again, just like a guy like Chris Jericho, he evolved, he improved his look, he improved his promos. Now I think he's probably one of the best heels of his generation, so props to Miz again.
Future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and on to number 1 on my list, another moment that Rich here predicted, and that was at WrestleMania 31. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. He predicted, he said, in the middle of the match that Seth Rollins was going to cash in.
Can I take this real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
No, I appreciate it.
I don't know if it's going to make your list or not, but it's my number 1.
Right, and no, I'm going to take this real quick, and he's right. I actually wrote a column on this. And as you guys probably watching the show know, you see a lot of WrestleMania or other pay-per-view card prediction columns, and I wrote one as well that year. And I actually predicted that the Reigns versus Brock Lesnar WWE Championship match at WrestleMania 31 would be interrupted by Seth Rollins in the middle of the match and he would cash in and he would win that match and become the WWE champion. Not afterward, but during the match. And I don't know why I'm proud of that, but I am, because I guessed it. I didn't have any insider knowledge at the time, and so yeah.
And I thought one of the funnier moments that night was there was a girl out in the audience dressed as Seth Rollins carrying the Money in the Bank briefcase, which kind of set the tone for the night and was a prediction of how the night would end.
It did, and once again, one of the best WrestleMania moments of all time.
Yeah.
And one of the best, of course, the #1 best Money in the Bank cash-in of all time. It's #1 on both of our lists. Because we talked about this before. You have the WWE Championship, which is the reason for Money in the Bank in the first place. And you have somebody that cashes in on the grandest stage in the mall in a match between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, who a lot of people going in like, who's going to win this match? In fact, not a lot of people thought it was going to be a great match.
No, a lot of people thought Seth Rollins was going to win that match, right?
Yeah, maybe Rich Twiling thought that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and nobody else.
Didn't, yeah.
But it was a good match, and then Rollins came out, and we talk a lot, actually, about commentary and how commentary adds a lot to what's going on at that particular moment. And JBL, say what you will about him, a lot of people do say good and bad things about him, but he said, "This is brilliant." Remember that?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And that was a shoot, really, because it was brilliant booking, because there really was no good ending to that match. It was the booking that made that match great. Both between Reigns and Lesnar, that match was booked to perfection.
Right.
I have a feeling that Pat Patterson probably played a part in that one, but the best way to end that match was Seth Rollins cashing in.
And it's hard to legitimately take a title off of Brock Lesnar and do so in a fashion that people are going to believe.
And you couldn't really beat the rising star Roman Reigns either, even though people didn't really necessarily like him.
Exactly.
To this day, they don't really like him.
Don't be surprised at WrestleMania 34 if you see Reigns and Lesnar go at it.
That could be the main
one more
event.
time. I mean, not that we would know that, but I'm just saying. And on both of our lists, #1 is Seth Rollins. Best cash-in of all time at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship in the main event. You can't really get better than that. And speaking of, you can't get better than that. You can't get better than El Segundo Brewery's Stone Cold Steve Austin's Broken Skull IPA, baby. Right here. Every single time we do one of these.
On the Pro Wrestling Top 5, the unofficial sponsor.
T5.
Thanks for joining us on the red carpet. Please like and subscribe for weekly pro wrestling top 5s.
Thank you for watching the Pro Wrestling Top 5. See you next week on the red carpet.